My sister and her family are visiting us this weekend, and I've got two little nieces, and they came into the kitchen yesterday and they spotted this lovely watermelon sitting on the side. And one of them said, "Do you know that I love watermelon? Can I take it home with me?" I said, "Well, it was actually quite expensive, so you can't have it, but we'll eat it later." So she was looking forward to this watermelon. And then a bit later on the day, the other niece came in and she said, oh, I like watermelon. Can I have some? I said, "Yeah, we'll have that for pudding. We'll have it later." And so they were looking forward to this watermelon. And we ate our dinner, and the time came for the watermelon. It looked a lovely watermelon. It was green, ripe, firm. It was a beautiful watermelon. It was a little on the small side, but it was a lovely watermelon. I put it there. I got out my knife, cut into it. I thought, that doesn't look quite right. I started to chop it up, and I thought, that's really not right. It was all pappy and horrible and rotten in the middle. And I thought, I'll cut out the bits, and I started to cut, and there wasn't much left. So I thought, sorry, girls, it's just, what a disappointment that was. So that was really disappointing. Now, Jesus has just been invited round for a spot of lunch at the Pharisee's house, and there's a problem too. It's not rotten food. It's not a rotten watermelon. The problem is with the people. You see, they're not what they appear to be on the outside. Once you get below the surface and see their hearts, it's rotten. It's horrid. And that's what Jesus faces as he comes to this respectable luncheon. It's basically a bowl full of hypocrites. And the danger is for us, of course, sitting here, is that we think, well, the Pharisees, they were hypocrites, but we're okay, aren't we? But we do need to be careful, because this could easily be us. In fact, this message really applies to people like us rather than the people out there. So let's just back up a little bit and set the scene. Jesus had been teaching. He'd cast out the demon. And as you can imagine, people had been amazed by this. They were marveling at Jesus. But some, they didn't want to let themselves believe. And so they were saying, well, we know you've just done this amazing thing, Jesus, and we saw that, but we want another sign. Give us something more. Still others were trying to attribute his power to the devil. They couldn't deny it. And so they had to say, well, it's come from somewhere, and we don't think it's from God, so it must have come from the devil. And so Jesus challenges them in no uncertain terms and says, look, you're either with me or you're against me. There's no middle ground. And to those who wanted more signs, he said, well, you're not going to get any more except for the sign of Jonah, which we thought about last week. And that was really the sign of Jesus. Jesus' death and resurrection. That was the sign he was going to give them. That's the sign that's been shining out for all of us ever since Jesus did it. That is what we are meant to look at and believe. Now, in verse 29, the crowds were increasing, and as Jesus was drawing to a close, a Pharisee asks him to lunch. And we might be a bit surprised by that, because we know the Pharisees and Jesus didn't always see eye to eye, but at this point they're still sort of getting to know each other a bit. But it's about to get a lot worse after this incident, because he deals their pride a mortal blow. And it can be quite helpful when someone sort of calls you out and says, hey, and you think, oh yeah, I was doing that. Or it can be humiliating if they call you out and say, hey, you said that, but you're doing that. It's embarrassing, isn't it? And the Pharisees, they're still trying to work out what to make of Jesus at this point, but they're about to get called out. It's humiliating. But at this point, Jesus is there. He's been teaching. The crowds are impressive. And it would be pretty good to have the most popular preacher come to your house. So Jesus gets invited back. This way, Jesus. Out of the way, everyone. Jesus is coming to my house. Come on, here we go. Come on this way, Jesus. And everyone's looking, and oh, what a privilege it was to have Jesus come to our house. But he's barely got through the door, and the trouble starts. You see, these Pharisees, they were scrupulously religious. They had many additional rules to God's law. They had added to it throughout the years. They were passed down from their forefathers. They had added to it themselves. They concerned all sorts of aspects of life. And one of the aspects was hand washing. Hand washing before you ate. Now, in our modern age, we applaud that, don't we? That's good. That's hygienic. Of course, we want to wash our hands before we eat. Well done, Mr. Pharisee. Except this had nothing to do with hygiene. It was all to do with ceremonial purity. See, these guys prided themselves on keeping God's commands. They thought they weren't like everyone else. And don't we all think that? I'm not like them. You know, I'm quite a good person, really. I'm not like them, those other people there. They thought that too, and they thought they were much better than everyone else. They thought they were a step above everyone else. We might think that as well, especially churchgoers. The term Pharisee means one who is separated. They separated themselves, not just from the Gentiles, but also from their fellow Jews, the ones who didn't quite come up to their own standards, you know. Here the Pharisees they are in a category of their own, and even their own fellow Jews aren't up to scratch. They're down on them. So this hand washing is all about washing off contaminants that they might have picked up as they went about their daily business, washing off the sin and dirt of others. This was their expected practice. So how shocking it was when Jesus didn't do it. He just walked straight in. He looked at the ceremonial jugs and he carried on to his seat. Was he that hungry? Didn't he know any better? Was he just being deliberately rude? But in verse 38 we see it was astonishing. It was unthinkable. I mean, what was Jesus doing? Actually, Jesus knew precisely what he was doing. In John 2:24, Jesus knows what's in the heart of a man or woman. Unlike me and my watermelon, Jesus didn't need to cut them open to see past that well-presented facade. He knows, although they look really good on the outside, inside they are yuck and rotten and horrible, full of greed, he says, and wickedness. They could fool others. They could even fool themselves. But they couldn't fool Jesus. And however we come this morning, God sees beyond that nice polished face that we present. And that's why none of us can really afford to get too comfortable this morning. There's no hiding. There's no pretending before God. And I think this is why Jesus doesn't just slip politely into their showy religious custom, because he wants to expose it for what it is. He wants to reveal to them everything is not okay. You can't just pretend to be good people and that's okay. It's not. And so Jesus is going to confront the problem. We're going to look at that in our second point, majoring on the minor. Majoring on the minor. Many of my family have a particular affection for the original Austin Mini, you know, the car. And perhaps some of you have owned a Mini. Many of my family have owned Minis throughout the years. I started off with a nice blue one and then an orange one. But Minis, the problem with Minis are they attract rust like Pharisees attract rules. They just can't seem to help themselves. It's like a rust magnet. Nah, it doesn't really work, but you know what I mean. Rust magnet. And there's one particular person in our family. I won't mention his name. He's not here today, I'm just saying. But one particular person in our not too distant family who has a particular skill of using metal biscuit tins and putty and spray paint and lots of polish to transform rusty wrecks and make them look really good. He patches the holes and makes them look amazing. And I pity the people that buy these cars from him. Because he is an expert, and you would go, that's a lovely car. And then you would realise it's actually rotten in the middle. And that's what's going on here. The Pharisees are busy washing their hands, thinking that they're clean because they've washed off everyone else's sin. But Jesus is about to give them a spiritual MOT, and they're going to fail. So he provokes the point by not washing his hands, and his host is aghast at this. And then Jesus takes his cue to get in there with the challenge, with the teaching, to tackle their hypocrisy. Verse 39, now you Pharisees cleanse the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. So he compares them to a cup and a dish. In our house, we try to share the washing up between the four of us, but as we've done that, it's become apparent that we don't all have the same standard of washing up. Sometimes you get a dish and you're drying it and it's still a bit dirty. I have to say, Claire, it's not good enough, you know. No, she's actually very good. But, you know, we don't all have the same standards. But even the most inexperienced washer-upper knows you don't just clean the outside, do you? You clean the inside. It's pretty basic stuff. And that's Jesus' point, all their ceremonial washing. It doesn't deal with the sin within. And they're busy washing off the supposed contamination from other people. But what about themselves? They're completely blind to the dirt within. They're so busy ticking the check boxes of religion, they've not realized it's not about doing stuff. This is the danger of religion and good works and charity and all those other things that look so good to everyone else. Actually, it can mask what's really going on inside. Whether someone's a pastor or a politician or a policeman, the outward facade can look so good, so respectable sometimes, can't it? But Jesus is interested in what's going on inside a person, and not just what they do or how they present to others. These Pharisees were super diligent, super religious. They were respectable pillars of the community. They really were. You would respect these guys. And yet when Jesus examines their hearts, he finds they're full of greed and wickedness. Well, greed in what way? Well, he doesn't tell us, but we can hazard a guess. You see, they want people to give them adoration and honor and praise. They want the best seat in the synagogue. You can imagine their pride sort of puffing up as they get ushered. Now, you come to the front, sir. You sit there where everyone can see you, where you can look out at everyone else. You have the best seats. That's what they were greedy for. Look at me. Look at how important I am. They want, at the end of verse 43, to be greeted in the marketplaces. That wasn't just a simple hello. They want some recognition. They want to be honored before other men. Oh, there goes Rabbi so-and-so. Oh, yes, wonderful. So glad you could come here. They want their name on the plaque. They want the biggest following. They want the most likes. They want the world to acknowledge you are someone. You count. You're a cut above the rest. I'm sure even the most humble amongst us recognize that that is an ever-present temptation for even normal people like us. Don't we want that? We want to be recognized for our humility, for our servant hearts, for our contribution, for our wit, for our insights, for whatever it is. We say, I hope you're looking at me. Did you see what I did the other day? It was really good, wasn't it? Yeah. It's not wrong to honor people for good things they do. It's not wrong to praise people when they do something good, but we need encouragement. But Jesus condemns the attitude of being greedy for it, putting on a show to get this praise. So these men, they were out to try and impress people, and they're trying to impress God as well. Even in their tithing, they're taking that to the extreme. You can imagine them counting out the mint leaves. There's 9 for me, and there's 1 for God. It's 9 for me, and there's 1 for God. They were taking the biblical commands to tithe beyond expectations. And the point Jesus is making, you're being overly precise to the point of absurdity. Why are you being so fastidious? Why are you making such a big thing of this small thing? It's because this was something that they could just about do. They could just about manage. It was time consuming, but they could achieve this. They could do this. It enabled them to do this, to prove to themselves and to everyone else, and even to God, just how good they were. Because look at how we do this. We're counting out the leaves. That's how good we are. It's self-righteousness. They felt by doing this, they could stand before God and claim they have kept the law to the last leaf. See what a good person I am, and this proves it. I've counted out these things. All without having to deal with the heart issues inside. And people still do this. We can be amazingly kind, do lots of good things, and assume, I must be a good person because look at all these good things I do. People can even come to church and we can go through the motions. We can sing the songs. We can pray. We can give to the work of the church. And we can think, I must be okay because I go to church. And others can be so devout and so religious and think, well, that my religion, it must count for something. I say the Lord's Prayer every day. I never swear. I never shop on a Sunday. I tithe to the last penny. I pray facing Mecca 5 times a day. I give thousands to charity. Whatever it is we are placing our hope in, it's like, I must be a good person because I do this. But if it's not a genuine reflection of who we are, of what's on the inside, then really, we're like these Pharisees. And we're just patching up a rusty old Mini. And we're going to fail the spiritual MOT. What's worse is infectious. And it's pretty hard-hitting what Jesus says. In verse 44, woe to you. Just imagine if Jesus was saying this to you, and you are the highest sort of category, echelons of society, and Jesus is saying this to you, and you think you're something, and Jesus says, woe to you, for you are like unmarked graves, and people walk over them without knowing it. Now there were many graves in Jerusalem, and they weren't always obvious where they were. And so at festival times like Passover, what they would do is they would whitewash the graves so that people who were traveling, they would see them and not step on them. And they wanted to avoid coming into contact with graves and dead bodies because of Numbers chapter 19, verse 16, which says if you come into contact with a dead person or a grave, then you'll be unclean for 7 days. This is what Jesus is saying. They are like these unmarked graves that people accidentally step on and then become unclean. In their attempts to prove themselves, they are in fact contaminating others. They are weighing others down with unhelpful rules and regulations. And we're going to deal with this more next week. But they are leading others astray. They are presenting unrealistic standards that no one can really live up to. And they're trying to enforce rules that God never really required. And this kind of legalism, it always produces casualties. It's a bit of a stereotype, but it's a stereotype for a reason. So an overbearing man can stamp his authority so heavily on his children and wife that he crushes them. And he squeezes every bit of fun and freedom out of their lives. And he probably separates himself and his family from many things because he, or if it's a woman, she, will be holy. We will be holy because we are going to separate ourselves from this. And it's arbitrary. This thing I've decided in my own head, this is wrong. We will separate ourselves from that and then we will be holy. We're not going to be like those other second-rate Christians there who do these things and I disapprove. Blah, blah, blah. Actually, we are going to be holy. We're going to do all these things and then we can sit back and judge everyone else. And the danger is, maybe it's well-intentioned, but the danger is that can be a disguise for something else. It can be making you think you're better, more spiritual, more orthodox, stricter, harsher, more pleasing to God because you think God's going to be pleased with that. But all the time you're doing that, it can be disguising the fact you're ignoring what God really wants. We can miss the heart of God because we're majoring on the minor And so we forget what God actually wants is love and something good inside, grace and mercy. Oh, there is a call for real holiness. But making small things big can often be the way we deflect attention from what's really going on inside us. We major on the minor, and because we can keep our minor rules, we then conclude, well, therefore I am righteous. Whilst all the time ignoring the gaping distance between our rules and who we actually are. So we never slander. We would never do that. But our hearts are full of hate. We don't swear. Not out loud, at least. We pretend to care about someone, but inside we're judging them because they're not a very good person. We rarely miss church, but when we come, we bring that critical spirit with us. We condemn the state of the world. Oh, isn't the world terrible? But we excuse the fantasies in our heads and on our screens, maybe. We condemn the way others express their worship. But in our hearts, there might be very little real worship at all. There's a disconnect between what we like to present and who we actually are. Legalists are hard to be about. They're hard to be around because they're always judging others, always pointing the finger. They're aghast at things that don't really matter. Whoa, do you know what so-and-so did? It was terrible. They wore a pair of trainers into church or something. It's like, whoa. If we're that, and there probably is a little bit of that in most of us, if we're honest, the danger is we can become so convinced about our own righteousness because we live up to our own little rules that we miss what God is really trying to do inside us, which is produce this grace and this love and this mercy and this generosity of spirit. That's what should be bubbling away inside us, and that's what should be driving our behaviour. We're going to look at that in our third and final point, majoring on the major. I don't want to give the wrong impression. Holiness is vitally important and is possibly underrated and undertaught in many churches today. We need to be careful to listen to what God says, to put it into practice as a major theme of Jesus' teaching. It's what Jesus says back in verse 28. Blessed rather are those who hear the word of God and keep it. But that obedience isn't to be skin deep. In the previous verse, Jesus has just taught how that light, this is why we had that bit read out, that light needs to enter into our bodies, come into our bodies and fill every area of ourselves. And the problem was the Pharisees, it's like they put on spiritual sun cream, and God's word is not getting into the parts it needs to get into. They're just acting the part without being the part. So what does it look like then to have an inside that matches the out? Verse 41, but give us alms at those things that are within, and behold, everything is clean for you. The NIV tries to simplify and smooth and explain it all over for us. It says, but now as for what is inside you, be generous to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. And if that's the primary meaning, then that's great, that's clear for us. But it's possible that the NIV is setting us off in slightly the wrong direction by putting it like that. Because this verse isn't in isolation, and if we took it in isolation, we could conclude, well, actually the answer to my problem inside is more rule-keeping. I just need to give to the poor, and if I do that, then I'm clean inside. The trouble is that doesn't really fit the context, does it? It doesn't make sense of having a clean inside. I mean, I think it does involve giving generously, and that is going to involve money to some degree, but it's not just money. It's not just giving to the poor. It's bigger, it's wider than that. And this verse needs to be taken in tandem with what follows directly. So in the next verse, 42, but woe to you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and every herb, and neglect justice and the love of God. So that's what Jesus is looking for, justice and the love of God. Verse 42, that justice and the love of God, that acts as a commentary to verse 41. So what does it mean to give as alms from within? It is this justice, this love of God. It's a love of God and a love of people. These are the things that we should be giving as alms to those in need, to the poor. And in the case of the Pharisees, this is what they lacked. They were counting out their aromatic herbs. They weren't counting out the 9 for me and 1 for you. They weren't doing that out of love for God. They weren't inspired by a love for God. They were inspired by their self-righteousness. I'm going to do this to prove how good I am. But God wants our good behavior to be motivated by a love for him and a love for people. Can you imagine if you went out on a date night and you went to a really nice restaurant, a posh one, something like McDonald's or something, and you're there eating your Big Mac and you bought flowers or chocolates for your partner, and it's all going really well, and then afterwards you go for a walk and it's really romantic, and then halfway through you turn to your partner and say, well, that's it. You've had it. You've had 1/10 of my time. You've had 1/10 of my money. I think we're good here. I think we're done. I'll see you next month. Okay, thank you. Bye. You've missed it, haven't you? That's just not love. That's not what it's about. You've missed the heart behind the action. It's all wrong. And whereas they are counting out the exact amount that they're meant to give, Jesus teaches that it's actually a love and concern that is unlimited. That's what God's looking for. Verse 41, give as alms those things that are within. Whatever that means, he places no limit on it. Verse 42, don't neglect justice and love of God. There's no limit there either. Justice goes on and on until it's done, until it's met, doesn't it? It's not, well, I'm sorry, I'll give you a little bit of justice. We didn't quite get there, and we'll have to stop there. Justice needs to be done. It's unlimited. And the love of God is beyond measure. Do you see the difference? A love, a concern, a generosity motivated by God's love and a love for others isn't interested in, oh, I missed a leaf. I better recount that. Or it's like, well, I'll just stick a few extra in. There we go. It's not concerned by this sort of constrictions and everything else. This was the Pharisees' problem. They were concerned overly with legalism and loveless exaggerations of the law in order to prove to everyone else how good they were, but that just disguised the real situation, that they didn't really know the grace and the love and the mercy and concern of God in their hearts. It's all about, got to do this, keep up appearances, rather than being motivated by a true work of God in their hearts. If they had been motivated by a true work of God in their hearts, they wouldn't have been so critical and judgy and self-righteous over trifles that just didn't matter. So how do we get these clean insides then? We have to backtrack to verse 33. And we see that it comes from letting in the light of the Lord Jesus into our lives. We need to let down our defenses. We need to confess our sins. Admit, hey, this is talking about me. I'm a hypocrite. I'm a sinner. We confess it to the Lord, and we don't trust in our good works or just try extra hard and be more religious and try to prove ourselves. Now we open our eyes to Jesus and we actively submit ourselves to Jesus so that he and his word come in and shine into all the nooks and crannies that are there, into the nooks and crannies of our souls, so that he can transform us from the inside out. And then we will be motivated by love, motivated by care and generosity, because his love transforms us. And when we're transformed by the gospel, then our concern for people, our love, passion for God, that will be transformed. It will be ignited, and it will start to flow from a genuine heart rather than just something I feel I have to do. I wonder if we're a little bit like that watermelon. We look so good on the outside, but if someone could see into us, if someone cut us open, they would say, oh, it's a bit rotten inside. I don't want that. You don't want that, do you? I don't think anyone wants to sit here and say, yeah, I want to be a hypocrite. No one wants that. No one wants to have Jesus call them a fool. And what we need to do is invite Jesus to come and to do his work in us. Let his love, let his grace, let his mercy, let his compassion, his patience, his kindness, let those things come in. Embrace them, enjoy them, know them. Say, yes, thank you. I want to know your Spirit at work in me, filling me up with this good fruit. And once it's at work in us, then it can start to flow out to others. I want that for me. I want that for you. I want to be part of a church that is just as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside. Don't we want that? I suggest we do. Well, let's spend a little bit of time just looking at examining ourselves before the Lord, and then we'll sing our final song.